I live again. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Blood was one of the last of the 1990s era build engine games. Whereas Duke was meant to parody action films and Lo Wang was meant to parody Asian action films, Blood was meant to parody horror films, and it did so quite well, and was able to remain in the popular consciousness due to its macabre aesthetic. Blood has been one of my most requested reviews, and I own it on both Steam and GOG. However, we are reviewing this Blood Doom WAD due to the fact that I lost my custom INI file that gave me model controls and a screen resolution that didn't make the game look like crap. Sadly, there has not been a Blood source port released due to the fact that the source code has not been released for some reason. And until that happens, Blood, well, shall not live again. There have been a number of other Doom WADs that have had Blood aesthetics, including Z-Blood and The Blood TC, and some Doom gameplay enhancements also feature Blood weapons, such as the double barrel in the Doom 3 mod. Today, we are looking at a fairly recent mod called Blood Dead on Arrival. This is a mod that recreates the Blood gameplay and features new levels and Doom 64 enemies. Now, just what is Blood gameplay, you might ask? Well, imagine holding a concrete block that has been reinforced with steel rebar and then ramming your head into it over and over and over again. You have some hilarious difficulty settings, with the easiest being Z-Doom forum users. Methinks that the modder has had some problems with whiny forum people. I played the game at first on the 3rd difficulty setting. Big mistake. Arcalite here would be considered hard mode on any sane game. On this difficulty mode, you will die, and die a lot. The enemies do a crap ton of damage, and there are a lot of them, and they have high health as well. And you will always be running out of ammo. You would better learn to quick save literally every 5 feet, because in this game, you can go from full health and armor to dead every time you turn the bloody corner. And as surprising as it might sound, I wouldn't have it any other way. The build engine games were always way harder than the Doom engine games. The enemies always did more damage and health was always way more scarce. And that is due to the different design philosophies. Doom was an id Software game and they always wanted you causing cosmic carnage. The build engine first-person shooters wanted to give you a challenge and they wanted you to earn that carnage. Blood took it a step in a slightly different direction. The game was meant to be less an id tickler and more a survival horror game. You have limited ammo and even the weakest of enemies can kill you in a few hits, and health is very hard to find. This is offset by some really powerful weapons that can even up the odds. Overall, Blood changes things just enough to be its own thing rather than simply being another build engine game. And of course, the mod captures this perfectly. By using the magic of Chernobog, we shall now review the implements of darkness. You start the game with a mighty trident, with which you shall perforate your foes. And don't let anyone tell you it's a pitchfork. It's a trident, goddammit. Does it look like thou art pitching hay here? Then there is the flare gun, and it works well against a variety of foes and can kill the imp in 1 to 2 hits. Then you have the double-barreled shotgun, and it works well as a go-to gun. The Tommy gun is very useful against most enemies, but unlike most video game machine guns, you will blow through your entire stock of ammo in just a few seconds. You then have the belt-fed LMG, and it works well enough, and is good for taking on crowds of enemies. You then have the phased plasma pulse rifle in the 40-watt range, and it's good for taking down hard-to-kill enemies and bosses. Then there are a number of thrown weapons, such as TNT. It works decently here and there, but there is always a risk of blowing yourself up. The Molotov Cocktail seems to be kind of useless, as it never does enough damage to be worth employing. Then you get this. The Voodoo Doll, in addition to being super cool, is also super effective against most enemies. The game has one of the most awesome flamethrowers of all time, or at the very least the most fun. You have a spray paint can and a lighter. It's fairly effective against weak enemies, and you can throw the spray paint can for an explosive effect. Your one major heavy weapon is the Napalm Launcher, and it works well as the BFG of the game and is good for taking on bosses. The last weapon in the game is the Skull Staff, and it's decent enough and looks really cool, but you will find yourself burning yourself more often than not. The weapons in the game almost all come from the based Blood game, and show off that game's unique and impressive arsenal, and stand as some of the best in first-person shooting in general. Enemies for the game come from either Blood or Doom 64. You face just about every enemy from Doom 64 sans the Zombiemen, and they can all do a crap ton of damage to you. The only enemy that kind of disappoints is the Cyberdemon. Since he is a sprite meant for the N64, he is kind of small compared to his PC counterpart, and thus is a little less intimidating than he could be. The one enemy that really seems out of place in this mod is the Revenant. The modder chose to use the unaltered Doom 2 Revenant, and while he was certainly creepy in that game, here he just comes off as rather pedestrian. Level design in the mod is nothing short of excellent, with wide and sprawling levels that range from the 20s inspired Blood levels to the demonic hellscapes of Doom 64. The mod avoids many of the problems of Doom WAD levels and is able to keep a consistent pace. The levels are neither too short nor do they go on over long. The health and ammo, while scarce, are at the very least balanced, and you will never end up wandering in circles because you can't figure out where to bloody well go. Music for the mod is good, with numerous high-quality tracks throughout, with my favorite being from level 3. In the game, you play as the undead hitman named Caleb, and the game features a good amount of Caleb talk, although it can be hard to hear at times. But it does indeed help spice up the game. So you know all that DLC that $60 games make you pay for? Well, here is a free mod that goes above and beyond. In this mod, you have bonus levels and mini-games. Remember when games had those? Scratch that. Remember when EA games had those? And they weren't either A, DLC, or B, the entire bloody game? The bonus levels are quite fun, and one actually takes place in the Old West town, seen in Duke Nukem: A Time to Kill. And yes, poor Duke even puts in an appearance. The mini-games are of great interest as they are quite imaginative and take me back to the heady days of gaming when games were less disposable and more of an experience. The mini-games range from platforming to rush to the exit. Then you got some challenge maps where all you have is your mighty trident to face foes. These mini-games increase the life of the mod past the initial first-person shooter levels and take this mod from just being a fun, blood-inspired WAD to a game in its own right. Would you believe this mod even has a story? Not that it's actually an integral part of the game. Instead, at the very end, everything is revealed. In the game, you play as Caleb. You live again, and you must face the Cabal, the faction from the first game. They have joined forces with the demons from Doom 64 to clone the first game's final boss, Chernobog. It's up to Caleb to be a bad enough undead dude to stop them. Now, throughout the game, you don't know any of this. As far as you, the player, is concerned, some modder just added some Doom 64 sprites to blood-inspired levels. But after you defeat Clone Chernobog, you get this text screen and it gives you all the context for everything you just did. It's an after-the-fact story, but it works so well and makes perfect sense, and it's actually decently written compared to many Doom mod stories, and even gets a dig into the wine culture of today's internet. I would just suggest that a text screen be put in at the beginning to prime the players for the adventure they are about to undertake. I discovered this particular mod quite by accident on ModDB, and I went into it with absolutely zero preconceived notions. And I was heartily impressed by its quality, and I highly recommend giving it a download. And so I am Generallotz, wishing you good Blood TC, and good Z-Blood whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed my review of Blood Dead on Arrival, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you these awesome mod reviews.